Hey there, I'm gonna do a video before I go to sleep. I actually want to do 2 videos, and yeah. So for the first video that I want to do, it's basically gonna be about a few things. So I have always found that there are different dynamics to colorism, and when we talk about colorism as far as what I consider, colorism crybabies sector, the people who complain about colorism and things of that nature, and the other side of people who are, kind of like the opposing side, I guess you could say, or the perspective of the lighter skinned woman. And to me, it's like this. With the darker skinned women who complain about colorism, of which, I don't believe in, but that complain about it. They always include people who are not among their sector. And they also include the support of those who are not in their sector. So, for example, brown-skinned women, dark brown-skinned women, share plenty of their stories about colorism. Their experiences on the negative end of it, and things of that nature. They are allowed to sympathize with darker skinned women who complain about this thing called colorism. And, I was watching this video, like, I'll say 1.5 months ago. And basically, they were having a video on how and who, why lighter skin platforms do not survive or are as prosperous as, those who are along the colorism train platforms. And in my perspective, it's like lighter skin platforms, there's a big problem here. Is that if you want to have anyone, you'll have people who are light skinned who have their voice, right? And then you'll have people who aren't light skinned, they'll have their voice too. The problem is, they will have it where they want to be heard, but you cannot relate to them, you cannot understand them. They just want to really be left alone and put to their own category, right? They don't want to be understood. They don't want anything as far as relating to them or anything. And so when you exclude other people from actually understanding your point of view, you become misunderstood because you pushed everyone away. And so that's my perspective when it comes to, some people. Like I said, this video was talking about why light skin platforms don't last. Well, it's because you're excluding everybody. I even said on that platform, you exclude Hispanic people sometimes, and you try and claim they're not real light skinned people because they're Hispanic or whatever, or they're not real light skinned mixed people because they're black or whatever. There's a constant division in their sector. Well, I feel like with colorism, crybaby platforms, they basically, and I'm not obviously speaking in favor of their platform, I'm not speaking in favor of either. I'm just saying, as someone who is neither category, and I'm just kind of observing personally from what I've seen from both sides, basically. They seem to be more inclusive towards the women who can relate to them, basically. So, darker brown skinned girls, they will let them speak their piece. They won't freak out because they just share their experience. You know what I mean? When someone is, even just regular brown skin, there's so many platforms with colorism crybabies, with brown skinned content creators. And, I've had my opinions on those, on their ulterior motives. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but that's for another video. But I mean, the point is, they're allowed to basically give a voice to darker skinned women, and they're allowed to share their own views and opinions and experiences with that dynamic of so called colorism. Personally, for me, I've always found I can't relate when people talk about colorism and saying that there's like a problem with someone's skin tone because they're too dark skinned. Because, for me, I grew up with my mother, and I considered her dark skinned. And because I considered her dark skinned and she considered herself dark skinned, um, I took what she said as actual truth. So she said that colorism didn't exist. And the reason she said colorism doesn't exist is because she said basically, if you think of it this way, dark skinned people are supposed to have the words, right? Brown skinned people are supposed to have it a little bit better than dark skinned people, or a little less worse. And then, light brown skinned people, they're supposed to have like it a little bit better than that. And I would say being in that category, there's some different dynamics there. I'm not going to get into it, but it's a different dynamic basically. But yeah, there's things that are better for lighter brown skin people, and then after that, light skin people, then like white passing, and then white people. So the thing is like this. Did you realize, as I've said before, that I obviously ended up saying white people? So then, obviously, it's not a colorism issue if it's really just an issue and a matter of who is closest to white, who is white. Because next to a white person, are any of those people going to be better? No. We all know this, that no individual spoken of is going to be better than white people with this type of game, saying that the lightest is the better. You know what I mean? So that's why, from my perspective, it's like, you know, I can't relate to the idea that colorism does exist or anything of that nature, you know. But the other part of it is this. This is why, for me, I've never wanted to claim that I was like a part of a pro light skinned, platform or anything, was because I don't like the idea of saying I don't like the idea of saying like that this person can't really have their opinion or their view because I don't like how they are, or this or that. And then there's a lot of infighting, like racially, because like for me personally, I've dealt with when it comes to colorism, I've dealt with like feature problems where people my complexion, or people darker than me, or people a little lighter than me will say your features don't look like the rest of us, basically. And for me, that has always been a problem for relatable purposes. Like, it's hard to relate to people when all they ever say is they don't relate to your phenotype or how you look. You know what I mean? So, that's why for me, it's kind of like, I don't know, I never really feel like skin tone really has a matter in my experience racially, really. More so facial features and like things of that nature. Skin tone, I mean, I can't say that I've ever been told I was too dark skinned. I've had comments like, oh, that skin tone, like, not up that skin tone. I mean, that hair color is right for your skin tone. Skin tone is right for your hair color. No, the other way around. But anyway, um, oh, I thought I turned the tape off. Sorry. But anyway, so so yeah, I've never had any of that experience. I mean, like, I've had a couple of compliments here and there, but I've never had any situation where, like, people basically treat me poorly, like, as far as, like, being too light skinned, and never been told I was too dark skinned. It's always been, like I said in my first colorism video, I've always been taught and told that I was kind of like the right complexion, or like, how to speak, like, not too dark, not too light kind of thing. That's been my experience when it comes to my skin tone. Um, and that's from outsiders. As far as like my family, it's always been like that I was kind of on the lighter end, but it wasn't like, I never really felt it was my facial. I didn't feel like it was my skin tone. I felt like it's more my facial features just weren't like my mother's. And like, for me personally, I always wanted features similar to my mother's. And so that was a major, issue I've always struggled with. But as far as like skin tone, it's just never been an issue for me. I do think, like I said, with different platforms, when it comes to dark skin colorism platforms and light skin colorism platforms, I feel like dark skin colorism platforms always are a bit more accepting towards different people that may not share the complete experience of a dark skinned person, but may be able to relate. And like I said, with lighter skin platforms, they don't really do that. So it's always more so about, like, how I've said in the past with colorism, where it's more of a fight to be lighter, and that is brought to those platforms where it's like it's a fight on who can be the lightest. And to me, it's just like, you know, I kind of am of the mindset that, like, I like to just be able to talk about my experiences without having the hostility of, colorism is real and I need to be guilty for it on some level, even though, I'm not colorist against anyone and I think dark skin is more beautiful. It doesn't matter what I think, even in those cases. Most of the time with the colorism crybaby channels, they're more like, I've always been told, like I said, that I would be better off being darker than lighter, you know. And those kind of channels kind of tell me something similar to that. Um, well, lighter skin platforms is just kind of like I said, it's always been where they alienate themselves, basically. And if you alienate yourselves, no one's going to actually be able to relate to you. And even if they can relate to you, why would they openly relate to you when you get angry at them relating to you? So that's why, to me, I've always been critical of both sides. And, I mean, as my profile says, I'm more of the type, all shades matter kind of type of individual, not really pro either side. I think both sides can go wrong if they go to an extreme where they're basically hating people who are darker skinned, or they're hating people who are lighter skinned, or they're hating people in the middle. So, I mean, for me, this channel, I do not hate anyone or try to imply like one's complexion is better than the other. I really don't want to create that image. I know I have in the past said that I think, darker skin is more ideal personally, but that's only on me, my look, my phenotype looks a lot better dark skin, and I show my video recently on how I look darker skinned, and I think I look a lot better that way. So I mean, as far as like colorism platforms, I just generally don't really align with either side. I don't align with the darker side or the lighter side. Not really even like sometimes brown skinned women do like colorism experience videos. And even then, there's some things I relate to, and then other times I don't. And then it really depends on the brown skinned woman. It really does. Some brown skinned women are more on the darker end, so then they had more experiences similar to darker skinned women. And some brown skinned women are closer to the lighter skinned end. There's one lady I follow that talked about colorism once, and she falls more on the lighter end. And I definitely loved her video on colorism. There were some things, I don't agree with when it comes to like colorism existing, but I call colorism racism basically. That doesn't mean I'm saying that it doesn't affect dark skinned black women differently, or, it doesn't exist, like you're not treated differently for your skin tone. That's not what I'm saying. When I say that colorism is racism, I'm basically trying to say that, well, it's in favor of white people, it's not in favor of light skinned people. And because it's not in favor of light skinned people, it's not colorism. Colorism would have to be in favor of light skinned people. Like, light skinned people would have to basically be the shit, okay? They'd have to be the best thing ever. But it's not basically presented that way, because if it was actually presented that way, it would basically put light-skinned people above white people, and it never does. That's how you know that it's really racism hiding in a mask of colorism. So that's why, to me, I don't agree with the word colorism, but I'm not trying to say that the things that darker skinned people experience is quite like non-existent, because as someone who is lighter skinned, I have never um tried to deny some aspects, because it's like I've experienced some situations, and I've said it before, with dark skinned black men and how they talk about darker skinned black women. And when I hear about like the context of, or the perspective of darker skinned black women from darker skinned black men, I understand that, if this is what they're saying and this is how they feel about darker skinned black women, that is a form of colorism. It is. It's a form, but not colorism, but more like racism, I'm trying to say. That is a form of what people call colorism, basically. Um, but the thing is, how that black man feels about light skinned women isn't in a better light than white women. So basically, he feels most likely like white women are better still than what like light skinned women. So then how is it really colorism when he's still putting white women above everybody else? So that's why I don't believe in the term colorism. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in the experiences that dark skinned black women have. I do agree that yes, they do have certain experiences, and I've never denied that from personal experience, which is a thing that I was never taught about. Like my mother, she's a darker brown complexion. She was kind of like left alone. She wasn't told she was too dark or anything. Most likely because she just didn't prefer dark skinned men herself. So if you don't pursue something and it doesn't pursue you, you just don't care, you know what I mean? Anyway, so she never taught me anything like that, and she kind of just was like, colorism doesn't exist, you know? And so for me, it was kind of like I had to experience that on my own from hearing from dark skinned black men talk poorly about dark skinned black women and have a perspective towards me as if, you know, it's better that I'm mixed or that I am perceived as mixed or whatever by them. And so that was generally where I learned that there is an element of racism or self-hating when it comes to dark-skinned black men and dark-skinned black women. But I will say some of this is actually, I've seen it from not just dark-skinned black men. And I don't mean to say that to attack dark-skinned black women. I try to explain everything as honestly as possible when it comes to colorism. Um, but yeah, to me, I've had experiences where dark skinned black women have the same effect and same problem. I know a lot of people claim that it's not it's not dark skinned black women's fault because it was internalized. But I think honestly, dark skinned black men, their self hate and their issues are internalized. That's why they're dark skinned and they don't like themselves as well. So I say both manifestations of racism and self hate and colorism with dark skinned black people against each other is both equally wrong, equally, the same result, basically. The same issue, basically. Also, um, one other thing I wanted to touch upon was, when it comes to the light skin side of it, I have experienced way more issues when it comes to features and skin tone, more analytic behavior. Okay, I said analytic, like analytical behavior. And there's more like of a competition. I've talked about that before with women, similar in complexion, but like the ones lighter, sometimes there's a problem when it comes to, you have features that are more ethnically ambiguous, but another one has more African features, but they're lighter skinned. And it's like, sometimes the person who has more African features might attack you because their features are more African, but their skin is darker, kind of thing. Sometimes this happens with hair texture too. Say someone is darker than you, but their hair is softer than yours, or straighter than yours, or longer than yours. They will try and take that as a way to kind of feel better about the fact that they're darker than you. As if being dark skinned is a bad thing. It's just like so sad. Um, And that's another thing about dark skin. It's just like I get a little annoyed with people because people never understand for me like my perfection and my ideal for skin tone and things of that nature is looking darker skinned. And it's annoying, especially, with the whole situation in the past with people, when I've had this happen several times. If I edit my photos, people always think that I like my photos, right? And it's always like I've always tried to darken my photos, and it's like, why would editing or fixing a photo mean you have to lighten it? Why couldn't it mean that you need to darken it? Like, darkening a photo is always seen as a bad thing as opposed to lightening a photo seems like it's a better thing. Like you're trying to do something to make yourself look better. It's like lighter isn't gonna make you look better automatically. So I never understood that idea, or the idea that the assumption that everybody was raised to think darker skin was less than, you know. And I get that from all types of skin tones of people. I've seen that from people my own complexion, light skinned, brown skinned, dark skinned. It, it's just like all sorts, basically. And for me, it's just a little bit frustrating that people have this conquered mindset, and lack of love for themselves. Because, I mean, as black people, we should never think in that mindset because we're not the lightest people. It would make more sense to actually think darker is more ideal because um, we can be one of the darkest types of people, but we can't be the lightest because we're all black. So, I don't know. To me, that's just a few thoughts on colorism for today, and as far as my channel. To me, I feel like sometimes people don't really know what my channel is about. So many people think that it's more so me. I guess some people have thought that I was more pro dark skinned. Some people have thought I was more pro light skinned for colorism. If you look at my profile, most people actually see I'm more like all shades matter and all shades are beautiful kind of thing. I don't promote one or the other. So that's all I really have to say. And I'm sorry the video's a little long, but this is like one of the first videos I've done since February, wasn't it? Yeah. And I figured I would do a very long video or a longer video just to make sure, I'm more visible on this channel and not, always anonymous. So, yeah. Alright. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.